This and other stories of the day, we're joined by Finance Minister Matthias Cormann, live from Perth, Western Australia, where it is very early. So again, thank you for your time this morning. Now, can the government afford to be giving drought-stricken farmers any kind of relief on income tax?
Well, look, without going into any specific measures, and there's always pre-budget speculation, and now apparently we also have pre-half-yearly budget update speculation. So without going into any specific measures, of course, we are focused on providing additional support. As the drought continues and the impact of the drought, continues to worsen, of course, our policy response to it will continue to evolve and strengthen. So, it's a matter of public record that we are assessing further measures. We've already done a lot. We're obviously focused on supporting families, communities, and indeed on measures to build better drought resilience into the future. And we will continue to assess further measures as appropriate. We're working with the NFF. We're reviewing all of the advice from all of the various quarters and all of the suggestions, and we'll make judgments as we always do.
When it comes to that mid-year budget update, will we be seeing any kind of drought relief in that, or are we going to be seeing any announcements before that?
Well, obviously in the half-yearly budget update is where all of the fiscal updates and economic updates are provided, and any decisions that may be announced between now and then will be reconciled in terms of budget numbers, in that document. We've got two major budget documents every year. The budget, obviously, on the 2nd of April this year, and then the half-yearly budget update, in the middle of December. And policy decisions in the intervening periods get reflected in that document. But of course, as judgments are made and as additional support is provided through the decisions that we've made, of course, they can be announced at any point, as has been the case.
So is the government going to consider income tax cuts for farmers who are struggling in drought areas?
Well, look, I've seen that speculation. I'm used to pre-budget and now also a pre-half-yearly budget update speculation. I'm not going to comment on individual options that the government may or may not be considering. What we are doing is we're working with all relevant stakeholders. We are assessing a lot of information, a lot of advice on possible options, and through the proper process of the Expenditure Review Committee, we'll make judgments on what is the best way in all of the circumstances to provide further support to families, communities, and to build further drought resilience for the future.
So you are considering further drought funding?
Well, that's a matter of public record. Obviously, as the drought continues to, obviously go from worse to worse across significant parts of Australia, and the impact continues to get worse, of course, we will continue to consider what additional support measures we can put in place, and that is what we're doing, and that's a matter of public record.
Now, when it comes to the push for a stimulus for the economy, you received quite a bit of backlash this week when you said Labor's stimulus response to the GFC pushed up interest rates, when in that time the analysis says it dropped from 7.25% to 3%. Do you still stand by that?
Well, firstly, I didn't receive quite a lot of pushback. I got pushback from people who supported, obviously, the Labor agenda, and that analysis is wrong. If you look at what happened in the period from September 2009 over the subsequent 12 to 14 months, uniquely around the world, the official cash rate went from 3% to 4.75%. And that was at a time when the official cash rate in the US, the UK, across Europe was hovering at about 0%, and where many countries around the world were pursuing quantitative easing. And in Australia, not only did we have a comparatively very high official cash rate, we had high terms of trade, and all of these factors combined meant that the value of our currency was obviously significantly higher than it usually is, or than it has been in more recent times, and that had a significant impact on the international competitiveness of all of the non-iron ore, coal, LNG parts of the economy, making them less competitive in terms of Australian exports around the world. And That did have a lasting impact in terms of our economy at the time, and indeed it had a lasting impact on the budget. I mean, essentially you had at the same time as Kevin Rudd was pushing billions and billions of dollars out for pink bats and overpriced school halls, you name it, sending checks to dead people. At the same time as that was happening from the government, putting the foot on the fiscal accelerator, the Reserve Bank was putting the foot on the brakes, increasing the official cash rate in 12 to 14 months by 1.75% from 3 to 4.75%. I mean, that is a matter of public record, and anyone who denies that just denies facts.
Right now, our interest rates are 0.75%. Is that a good thing?
Well, monetary policy settings are a matter for the Reserve Bank, and the Reserve Bank makes these judgments independently, and that is a very important feature of our architecture. So, obviously, it's a matter for the Reserve Bank to assess the information and make judgments, and we absolutely respect that independence. And in an international
context, but when
context,
we have a tightening of fiscal policy, which is the lever you can control, does it give them any option but to push monetary policy?
Well, I completely disagree with that proposition. We have delivered a pro-growth budget. We're implementing a pro-growth budget. We have legislated more than $300 billion worth of income tax relief over the last 2 years. I mean, $20 billion, more than $20 billion worth of income tax relief has gone back into people's pockets over the last 3 or so months. And indeed, we are rolling out a massive $100 billion infrastructure investment plan, federally from the federal funding point of view. And, I mean, people are suggesting that we should do more faster. Well, we are, of course, prepared to do more faster in those areas where that makes sense, but we will never do what Kevin Rudd did, and that is, throw money at overpriced school halls that many schools didn't need, or putting, more than $1 billion into pink bats into people's roofs, which set houses on fire to the point where they had to spend another $1 billion to take those pink bats out of those roofs again. I mean, that might have stimulated the economy, but that's just crazy, a crazy waste of money, a crazy waste of money. And if you want to invest in genuinely productivity-enhancing, economy-enhancing infrastructure, you do actually need to make sure that the projects are properly identified, properly prioritized, and properly executed. And that means that you can't do it from one day to the next in many circumstances, in many instances.
Now, the Nationals have complained that you're getting too cosy with Pauline Hanson, spending too much time wooing the crossbench senator. We know that this has been a particular issue with the dairy industry code of conduct, going to Pauline Hanson's credit instead of the Nationals. Are you too cosy with Pauline Hanson?
No. I mean, look, I was a bit surprised by those comments because when it comes to the broader issue in relation to the dairy industry, I mean, I had a meeting with Pauline Hanson earlier in the sitting week where she asked for the re-regulation of the dairy industry, something that I disagreed with and the government disagreed with, and the farming industry, the dairy farmers disagree with. And later in the week, I became aware that there appeared to be some delays in the rollout of our pre-election commitment. The Nationals initiated pre-election commitment to deliver a dairy code of conduct. There were delays that were driven by administrative bottlenecks, and I helped Bridget McKenzie resolve those administrative bottlenecks. I mean, that was the beginning and the end of my involvement. I wasn't involved in, I mean, there was actually no deal in relation to this with Senator Hanson. I mean, all we're doing is implementing our agenda more quickly. And in fact, we did not agree to support what Pauline Hanson was asking for, though the Labor Party apparently now is in favour of the re-regulation of the dairy industry. So I was a bit surprised by those comments. But look, obviously, as in a broader sense in the Senate, of course, we've got to work with crossbench senators to get our agenda through. I mean, if we refuse to work with crossbench senators like Centre Alliance and One Nation and Senator Lambie, we would effectively give Labor and the Greens a veto over our agenda. I mean, it would mean that every time that Labor and the Greens disagree with something that we think is important for Australia, we wouldn't be able to get it through the Senate. And obviously, I think that my job is, among other things, to ensure that where we believe that something is important for Australia, that we can get it through the Senate. or where Labor and the Greens want to do something that would be bad for Australia, that we can stop it in the Senate. So from that point of view, I mean, I've got professional relationships with leaders and senators across the board. I've got a very good relationship, I would say, with Senator Wong and with Senator Di Natale. I've got professional relationships with everyone in the chamber in order to keep working things through.
Why do you think the Nats are so unhappy at the moment?
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that characterisation, and it's not for me to comment on internal affairs of other parties. But, I mean, obviously, I mean, right now, I mean, the Nationals, our friends in the Nationals, are very focused on ensuring that there is better, stronger support for rural communities in the context of, a terrible drought. And, in that sort of context, of course, I mean, there's a lot of passion and there's a lot of focus. And I mean, I think that there's nothing wrong with passion and determination and focus in politics. And that's just part of the normal process of making sure that ultimately we land on the best possible way forward.
Matthias Cormann, thank you for your time.
Always good to talk to you.